This is Matthew McConaughey.
Natalie Portman.
James Patterson.
Michael Ian Black.
And you are listening to
5 Questions
with Dan
Schawbel.
Dustin, welcome to 5 Questions.
Thank you. Thanks for having me, Dan. Very much.
How did you reflect on your own life growing up Mormon while producing and directing the series Under the Banner of Heaven?
I mean, it was a constant touchstone. It's certainly what brought me to the project, wanting to explore the things I wasn't allowed to explore as a kid in the faith, get answers to the questions that I had, particularly around, the treatment of people who were a little bit different. So it's not my story. It's not an autobiography. But I certainly am drawing from the well of my experience and from the people I know in the faith to try and get it as close to right as any biopic ever possibly can.
What I found too over the years is by doing a project, just like you have, it forces you to learn as much as you can about that topic.
Yeah, that's true.
So like I've written 3 books, and that forces me to do so much research to kind of learn as much as I can, talk to as many people as I can to help shape, the story and the advice in those books. So I just feel like the project can also help you better understand your situation.
I think you're right. It takes it from being like a subject you're interested in chatting about at a dinner conversation, and you're happy to weigh in with your opinion, and all of a sudden you have to stand behind it in front of the court of the world with a book or a television show. So you better have done your homework. That's what I say to my fellow writers when they come into a writer's room. Check the boxes, make sure you've asked the questions, multiple sources. Like, we're not here to do guesswork.
Absolutely. And how have you used your films to champion causes you believe in?
I mean, I think I subscribe to the Oprah Winfrey school of this popular entertainment can be both entertaining and needle moving. As I say, you can shake up the culture by shining light into places that haven't seen light in quite some time. So whether that's a queer history that has been buried by legislation that made it illegal or immoral, or a psychiatric problem. We've faced all of these things in our time as a queer community, and it means so many of our stories have been buried because there's a legitimate fear of being outed back in the turn of last century, or even in through the 60s into finally the rise of the gay movement in the 70s. It was still dangerous, and so shining that light into our past to really create a popularized history of foremothers and forefathers that I think queer young people really need. And now that's in debate again, sadly. So, in places like Florida, it's even more important to turn up the brightness on those lamps and shine them into those dark places, because there's a lot of misunderstanding there. And the same was true with Under the Banner of Heaven. It's a faith that does not like questions. It does not like light being shined in. But frankly, having experienced it firsthand, I knew where the light needed to go.
Yeah, and something very entertaining is a good way to educate, because it's really hard to break through the noise and get into people's heads, especially in today's fragmented world, and people are so distracted. So film is a powerful way of storytelling in a way in which you're also educating at the same time.
Yeah, and that's the trick, isn't it? I mean, you do it. It's we want people to. There's certain things we're like, I want you to see this. I want you to know this. I want you to understand this. I want your opinion on this. We need to talk about this. All of those sort of feelings that drive us to stay attached to like a passion project. Well, those don't necessarily entertain. Those could actually bore people to sleep. So then it's figuring out how to package it in a way where people are hungry to watch it. And so that's where often, you find yourself saying, well, does this fit into a certain genre? Does this, can I entertain in a certain way? Kind of look at it structurally so it feels like a thriller. Though we are delivering a spoonful of medicine, a spoonful of sugar helps the medicine go down. Well, that's comedy does that great in delivering messages, but there are other genres to deliver more difficult messages.
Yeah, like The Daily Show is such a good example. Like if
Right.
you didn't watch the news on like CNN or whatnot, you turn into Comedy Central, and now Jon Stewart is kind of making it a little bit entertaining and it's easily digestible, especially by young people.
Yeah, I think it's a really, comedy is a wonderful way of helping people see things that they might have been uncomfortable looking at. And a little bit of humor sometimes puts just enough of an arm's length of laughter between them and the subject that they'll actually open their eyes and look at it.
Oh,
And I hope the same is true. I think science fiction, fantasy, the true crime thrillers, they're all doing the same thing, just using a different flavor.
yeah, I think of
Yeah,
Elysium. I don't know if you've seen the movie Elysium, where the people who are the richest people are on a different planet, and then like poor people are on the Earth while it's rotting.
yeah,
And
yeah.
it basically shines a light on income inequality, but in a way that makes sense and resonates with people.
That's right. That's right. I mean, Star Trek for ages has been doing it in one form of the show or another. Yeah.
And over the past few episodes, I've talked to different actors who explain how hard it is to make a film. What are some of your great challenges when making yours, and how do you overcome them?
Well, how do you get these things greenlit? It's not easy. But I found myself in a position where, I struggle to just, there are things that actually get me out of bed and get the coffee machine going in the morning. And increasingly it has to be something that pulls at my mind and my heart at the same time. These are passion projects. They're usually about something that I think is broken in the world that needs addressing. And this is not what Hollywood is clamoring to make. And I get it. But it's so how do you construct such projects? I call them these little like chaos bombs. Really, you drop them into the culture, and this sounds horrible, and violent, and it's not. It's the opposite. But they break apart something that needs to be broken apart. A notion, a system, an institution, a false notion, I should say, and so that they can, once broken apart, come back together in a form that serves us better, that is more honest. And you gotta, do the really difficult work of convincing TV and film executives that there's potential for profit there. If it wasn't for the miniseries and having the room to do Under the Banner of Heaven as a true crime thriller instead of just as a piece of journalism, it wouldn't have gotten made. And it still took 10 years to get there. If it wasn't for Brokeback Mountain, I wouldn't have been able to convince Focus to try again with Milk. I owe Brokeback Mountain for the existence of Milk. And, but it's figuring out how to convince a business that these progressive ideas can also not just be valuable, but profitable. It's tough.
Yeah, I mean, I always remember I was in a trip. It was a trip to Israel, actually, and someone on the trip was a writer under Seth Rogen, and he said, because I was asking him questions, I always ask questions, and he says no one ever gets fired for making the next Batman film.
I mean, it's true. Although I'd love to make the next Batman film.
Yeah.
I think there's some messages in there that are important to pay attention to. So you can't get me knocking sci-fi fantasy horror. I was the youth president of the Academy of Science Fiction, Fantasy, and Horror for 10 years. So
That's awesome.
I'm there for Batman.
And
I'm just not the name that comes to mind when you're like, I want a cape on a character.
Hey, you never know.
Yeah, hello, come on, from your lips to whomever's ears, dude.
What can people learn from the complex relationship you had with your mom and you wrote about in your memoir?
Man, that I was a mama's boy, that I miss my mother dearly, that it's more what I learned from her. I mean, I think, I hope people, you can even steal the book, I don't care, but I hope people read it. It's at the library, you don't have to buy it. Don't tell my publisher I said that. But she's just, I think she was the North Star for a lot of people who are curious about the way we treat people who are different than us. My mother was paralyzed at 2 years old from polio, chest down. And, you know, it's not just the fact that she couldn't move her body, it's that she looked quite different because of the scoliosis that the polio caused and all of that. And, you know, it's just her story is one where she was told her life was going to be incredibly limited. And, you know, I think for outsiders watching what she achieved, so not only, I mean, this was a list of things people told her she would never do: fall in love, finish high school, go to college, get a career. No. She was going to be on the government dole. And she defied all that. And she did fall in love. She did get married. She did have 3 kids that almost killed her. It was, you know, medically very, very dangerous, and went on to have this extraordinary career working with the US government as an immunologist, helping to cure some of the horrible plagues of our time. And it just was, I was always very inspired that she defied the injustice of how we treat people with disabilities. And so I think it's no surprise that, you know, her queer son said, hey, yeah, I'm really different too. And I'm also not going to accept these limitations. And then just opening my eyes to other people who were treated unfairly, and not taking this system as law, you know, understanding that this system needs to be changed, needs to be updated, that even a document like the US Constitution needs to be ever changing and updating and growing with us. So she instilled these things in me. And I've been running with them ever since.
I love that. Seems like a very inspirational figure to you. And also, like, if she can do it, like, there's no excuses for other people as well, especially people who are more privileged.
And if she could, yes, if she could do it, many other people can, or can learn from the ways she defied the system. You know, it's going to be even harder for some people. I mean, let's be, you know, my mom at the very least was, yes, disabled, severely disabled, but she was white, so that was different. You know, other people are dealing with a system that won't even accept the way them and their power and their intelligence and their abilities just because the color of their skin doesn't match what they'd hoped. It's really, it's tough out there, tougher for some than it was even for my mother.
Definitely. And what's your best piece? And what's your best piece of career advice?
Well, if someone wants to be a writer, which is what I started out in the business doing, and it's still at the core of what I do. People ask, well, how do you get to be a good writer? Heck if I know, by the way. But one of the things that I know you have to do, that is perhaps not sufficient but necessary, is to keep writing. And that's not easy. It means that after you've had that night where you've written late into the wee hours, and you think this is brilliant, and then you sleep a few hours, wake up, read it, and it's not. Yes, you keep going, and you're willing to throw away the things that aren't as good as you had hoped. And when people send you rejection letter after rejection letter, email these days, you keep going, and it's very, very, it is hard, but it's what you have to do, and understanding that those opportunities to rewrite are opportunities to get stronger and better, and you got to look at it that way. There's nothing I've ever made that got a yes on draft 1 or submission 1, and what I would say to writers, especially new writers, is you're just looking for one yes. It's all you need. You get 1,000 no's. I mean, Milk was a prime example of that. Everyone said no. Everyone, and even Focus Features at first said no. But you got to stick with it, and it's not just sticking with what you have. It's not just saying, okay, well, I'm going to keep pushing this version of this draft. Hear the no's, listen to the advice, take the stuff that you think is helpful, and throw this useless stuff away if you don't agree, but keep writing, keep rewriting.
Oh, and no is going to be part of the rest of your life too, as long as you keep pushing yourself.
No is, you're going to hear no. It doesn't matter how many golden, shiny trophies you have. You're still going to get no's. Lots of no's.
But then you appreciate the yeses after all those no's as well.
You almost don't notice the yeses, because once you hear one, you start you start to move at light speed. You're like, take it before they change their mind. Go get past it. Go. And then you wake up one day and it's wrapped, and you're like, wait, did I get a green light? Did that just happen? That's sort of how it works.
Definitely. Well, that's great advice. And thank you so much for being on the show.
No problem. Thanks, Dan.